Tonight, caution over Christmas as the capital goes into tougher restrictions. Well, the UK's four nations are right now meeting to discuss plans. We'll have the very latest on that and reaction from Public Health England's London director, as well as the Minister for London, also ahead. Good evening. At midnight tonight, tougher restrictions will be brought into force in London, but there are warnings from doctors and politicians over the risks of relaxing those rules for Christmas next week. The UK's four nations are currently meeting to discuss the plans with the government, saying they are under constant review. Well, in the capital, pubs, restaurants, bars and theatres will all close in just a few hours for the third time this year as cases continue to rise. With the latest, here's our senior correspondent, Ronke Phillips. Well, joining me now is Professor Kevin Fenton, London Regional Director for Public Health England. Professor Fenton, thank you for joining me this evening. Can we just start with that warning from the top doctors in the country against relaxing the rules this Christmas? The UK's four nations are currently in a meeting about that right now. What do you think should happen? Well, decisions should be made then. Should it be scrapped entirely? Should it be reduced? Should it be less households mixing? What do you think? What you're saying is what we're ultimately saying here is if these rules aren't changed at all, we're relying on the public to do the right thing, to make the right decision. But they can, if they want to, under the current rules, mix three different households over 5 days and travel wherever they want in the country. Responsibly is what I'm trying to say, Professor Fenton. OK, so let's look at this, the fact that we're going into Tier 3 after midnight, aren't we? We're going to see the hospitality sector completely closed down. Do you think if we do go ahead on the 23rd and lift the restrictions, that that's going to be enough time to get the rates down to ensure that in January we don't see an enormous doubling of the virus, every single day doubling? What did Matt Hancock say yesterday? We are doubling every 7 days. So is this just over a week of Tier 3 going to be enough if we are lifting the restrictions at Christmas? Do you think then that these rules are under review and they could be next reviewed on the 23rd, couldn't they? Do you think that the government could make a late decision then about Christmas? I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I've got a very small amount of time left with you and we're just going on to our next story. But from you, should we be closing all the schools this week?
No.
So Kevin Fenton, thank you very much. Thank you. Well, on that note, for pupils and their parents in Greenwich, it has been a frustrating last week of winter term. Schools were told by the council to close on Sunday because of high rates of coronavirus. Well, the government threatened legal action if they don't reopen, and so the council has backed down. Children will return to school tomorrow. Our political correspondent Simon Harris reports. Well, theatres that had worked so hard and spent so much money to reopen, despite knowing they'd made a loss, can now only watch as the curtain comes down once again. In Hounslow, a pantomime due to open tonight will now just be streamed online. Better than nothing, but not the same. Rags Martel reports on an industry feeling let down. Well, joining me now is Minister for London, Paul Scully. Mr Scully, thank you for talking to us this evening. So London goes into Tier 3 tomorrow. Hello. Is this the right strategy when we have schools that are being forced to open for the remainder of the week, despite we know that numbers and infection rates are going up in children of school age, and we've got forcing theatres, pubs, restaurants to close after they spent thousands of pounds on making their premises COVID secure? Is this right?
Yeah.
Mr Scully, you say this isn't scapegoating hospitality, but a lot of the people that we know who work in bars, who own restaurants, they feel exactly that is happening to them. I mean, what they're getting now is the very opposite of a pre-Christmas boost, isn't it? I mean, this is the time of year that they would be relying on to make that money that would carry them through to January. And as it is now, we don't know when they're ever going to be able to open. Some are saying this is it for them.
Look, I'm used to transmission.
Unnecessary mixing, and we were talking about, we know that the infection rates are higher and when we're mixing households as well. So in that case, we really shouldn't be lifting restrictions over Christmas, should we?
Well,
if we do see a spike in the cases, are the public just going to be blamed for it?
Look, this isn't a blame.
Well, 2020 has been a year of unprecedented loss, upheaval and suffering, but it's also been a year where we've seen the very best in people, where communities have come together and where the courage and sacrifice of frontline workers have inspired us all. In a special film to be broadcast on ITV tomorrow evening, we look back at some of the remarkable stories we've covered at ITV News London. Here's Michael Sibbert with a preview of Reporting Coronavirus. Good evening. From midnight tomorrow, the capital goes into Tier 2 lockdown. Well, next football fans were only allowed in stadiums 2 weeks ago, but tonight is the final time this year a select few can watch their team play. QPR kicked off half an hour ago against Stoke. Antoine Allen is at QPR. Sally is here to talk weather, but goodness me, so I got up and it was dark, and it seemed to have been dark from lunchtime today.
I know, it's quite dreary, isn't it? A little look at the weather.
And finally, as the capital closes down for the third time this year in GP surgeries across London, doctors and healthcare workers are ramping up the country's biggest ever vaccination programme to pave the way to life eventually returning to normal. In Newham, which had one of the highest death rates, one batch of 975 doses will vaccinate 1 in 6 over 80s in the borough. Reason for excitement, as Martin Stew reports. That is the spirit, and that is it. We are back with the latest after ITV News at 10. Coming up, Mary with the ITV Evening News, but from me and the rest of the London team, bye-bye.